Let's start with a number. 45. That's how old Fernando Alonso turned this July, somewhere in the middle of what might be the quietest crisis in Formula One right now. Not a crash, not a scandal, just a two-time world champion running out of races to decide whether his career has one more real chapter left in it. Now here's a second number, 6th. That's where Max Verstappen sits in the championship standings heading into the Dutch Grand Prix, more than 200 points behind a Mercedes team that isn't even trying that hard to hide how far ahead they are. 4 straight titles. One of the most feared drivers the sport has ever produced. 6th place. Let's talk about why these two numbers are connected, because on paper they shouldn't be. One is a struggling midfield team hoping an engine upgrade finally gives their veteran driver a reason to stay. The other is a fallen dynasty watching its own driver wonder if loyalty is worth what it used to be. Different teams, different stories, you'd think. Stay with this one though, because by the end you'll see they're actually the same question asked twice. Let's take Alonso first, because his clock is the one actually ticking right now. Aston Martin's 2026 season has been rough by any measure. For most of the year they've sat near the bottom of the constructors' table, a single point to their name, and that point came from Alonso himself. Every teammate, every practice session, every radio message has carried the weight of a team that knows it's behind and isn't entirely sure why. Lance Stroll put it about as bluntly as a driver can. "There's nothing we like about our car," he said. "It has no strengths, so we can only improve." Aston Martin's problem this year hasn't just been about the power unit or the chassis. It's been both at once, which is about as bad as it gets in this sport. So they made a decision most teams don't make. Instead of trickling out small updates race by race, they saved everything for one big swing. A new chassis landed at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Lighter, aerodynamically reworked, with significant weight reduction, and it actually worked, pushing Alonso into Q2 for the first time in 2026. Now at Zandvoort, the second half of the bet arrives. A new Honda engine, built under a duo upgrade system, which basically hands struggling manufacturers extra tokens to catch up faster. Honda, sitting at the back of the pack, got 2 of those tokens, and the first one lands at Zandvoort. Let's talk about what that upgrade actually needs to prove. Honda has already had to publicly deny a rumor that the new engine is worth an extra 50 horsepower, which tells you 2 things. 1, expectations have gotten completely out of hand. 2, the paddock is watching this single engine update far more closely than an engine update usually deserves. Why would a mid-pack team's power unit revision carry that much weight? Because everyone knows what's actually riding on it. Here's the twist though, and it's the part most casual coverage of this story misses entirely. You'd assume the upgrade is the deciding factor in whether Alonso stays. Ask Alonso directly, and he tells you something different. "It's difficult to put a number on it," he said, "because we've had enough experience calculating performance gains before and not achieving them." For him, it's less about one dyno reading and more about proving the team is finally pointed in the right direction. And when you push him further on what's actually shaping his decision, he doesn't point at Zandvoort at all. He points at 2027. Next year's regulations shift the power unit balance away from the current 50-50 split between combustion and battery power, tilting it back toward the combustion engine, the part of the car Honda has traditionally built well. So Alonso isn't really betting on this weekend's horsepower number. He's betting on a rulebook that doesn't even exist yet, on the theory that Aston Martin's whole project gets easier exactly when he'd need it to. Let's sit with that for a second. A driver's entire career decision hinging less on what's true right now and more on what might be true 12 months from now. Adrian Newey, the man who left Red Bull specifically to build this project, has said publicly that he believes Alonso will stay. And Newey's own credibility is quietly on the line here too. He didn't leave the most dominant designer's seat in the sport to watch this project stall. Now here's the gut punch, because F1's business side never lets a sentimental story stay purely sentimental for long. While Alonso talks about direction and confidence, there's another version of his future circulating in the background entirely, one that has nothing to do with Aston Martin at all. Reports out of Japan describe ongoing talks about Alonso returning to Alpine for 27, reuniting with his longtime advisor Flavio Briatore, the team where he won both of his championships. And funding that return, according to those same reports, could be an incoming title sponsor, Gucci. Hear that again. One of the sport's most romantic possible storylines, a 2-time champion, completing the circle back to where it all started. potentially bankrolled by a fashion house's marketing budget. Even the sentimental version of this story is a spreadsheet decision somewhere, and if Alonso actually goes, this is where it stops being one man's decision and starts being everyone's problem. Because Aston Martin without Alonso isn't just an empty seat. It's suddenly one of the most attractive openings on the entire grid, especially if Carlos Sainz becomes available. And Sainz, currently at Williams, is reportedly using this exact summer break to decide whether he wants to stay there. If he leaves Williams for Aston Martin, that opens a seat at Williams, and the driver most linked to filling it is Franco Colapinto, who's currently at Alpine and has reportedly been told by that team to explore his other options. Which, notice, is exactly the seat Alonso might be walking into if the Alpine reunion happens. 3 teams, 3 seats, 1 decision at the very top of the chain. And it doesn't even stop there. Over at Haas, Esteban Ocon is reportedly on his way out after a rough internal battle with teammate Oliver Bearman, 18 points to 3. None of that is connected to Alonso directly, but it's happening in the same window, the same market, the same summer, which tells you something important about this sport right now. Contracts don't really lock anything in, they just set the price of changing your mind. Let's pause the chain here and go back to that second number. 6th place. Because while Alonso's decision is playing out in public, there's a much quieter story happening at Red Bull, and it's arguably the bigger one. Over the last 2 years, nearly everyone who built that Red Bull empire has walked out the door. Adrian Newey, gone, and you already know where he landed. Jonathan Wheatley followed him out not long after. Christian Horner, the team principal for the entire dynasty, fired. Helmut Marko, the man who shaped Red Bull's driver program for decades, stepped away. Rob Marshall and Will Courtenay left even earlier, both for McLaren. And this year, Gianpiero Lambiase, Verstappen's race engineer since 2016, the voice in his ear through every one of those 4 titles, is leaving for McLaren too, starting 2028. That's not a bad season. That's a dismantling. And the car reflects it. Verstappen has spent much of 2026 calling it undrivable, spinning at multiple races, sitting more than 100 points behind the championship leaders. Red Bull has built its own power unit from scratch for the first time in the team's history. And while that engine is reportedly the best of the lot in 2026, if you believe the FIA, which I don't, the chassis around it hasn't caught up to it. Verstappen's contract technically runs through 2028, but it reportedly contains a performance-based exit clause, one that could have let him walk if he fell outside the top 2 in the standings by the summer break. He did fall outside it. He didn't walk, at least not yet. For a while this summer, the paddock genuinely believed the destination would be Mercedes, with insiders describing them as the favorites if Verstappen decided to leave. Then Mercedes reportedly triggered a contract extension with George Russell instead, with Russell's own agreement, closing that door for now. Red Bull, according to multiple reports, may have even paid an 8-figure sum just to keep that exit clause from being triggered at all. So here's the question worth sitting with. Verstappen stayed, but should staying feel safe right now? Let's talk about Russell for a second, because his situation might be the most honest answer the sport has given all year to whether contracts actually protect anyone. Russell just signed an extension, and in the same season, his own teammate, 19-year-old Kimi Antonelli, has been dismantling him in the standings, more than 200 points to his name, a 50-point lead over Lewis Hamilton, chasing what would be the youngest championship in the sport's history. If Antonelli wins this title as a rookie, in a car his teammate also drives, does a signed extension actually mean Russell's seat is guaranteed the way it looks on paper? F1 has shown you the answer to that question before. Signed doesn't mean safe. It just means safe until the team decides otherwise. Which brings us back to Verstappen, watching from inside a team that no longer resembles the one he won 4 titles with, staying anyway, not because the door to leaving is shut forever. Reports are only ever true until they aren't, and nothing in this sport stays closed for good. He's staying because, for now, loyalty won out over an uncertain exit. The same test Alonso is running at Aston Martin, just measured differently. One man deciding whether to leave a struggling project for a fresh start for potentially the final time. Another deciding whether to stay inside a collapsing one out of loyalty to what it used to be. So where does that leave us? Not with an answer. Aston Martin's upgrade at Zandvoort won't actually decide Alonso's future. Not really. Not if you believe his own words about the regulations. The domino chain from Alonso to Sainz, to Colapinto to Ocon hasn't fallen yet. Not officially, not on paper. and Verstappen's door to Mercedes is closed for now, right up until the next report says otherwise. What Zandvoort will actually tell you is smaller than all of that, and somehow bigger too. Whether an engine upgrade can restore enough confidence for one driver to believe in a project again. Everything else, the chain, the empire, the loyalty test, playing out at two teams at once. That was never really about horsepower. It was about how much proof it takes for someone to stay somewhere that's already let them down before. That's not a question F1 answers with a single Sunday. It's one worth sitting with long after the lights go out at Zandvoort. If you want to check out more of these stories as they develop, race weekend breakdowns, the buried history, and the answers behind lesser-known F1 facts, hit like and subscribe, and let's keep talking about it.